Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to make a map for your mud using Inkscape. The first thing that you're going to want to do is download Inkscape, install it, and launch it. You'll see a new document opened up here. As you can tell, there's a border with a document here. And the first thing that I always do whenever I open up a new Inkscape document is go to the document properties to change them. This is something you could probably change permanently in the preferences, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. OBS will not show you the drop-down menu for some reason. There's a lot of elements in Inkscape it doesn't capture properly. But if you go up to File and you go to the drop-down menu and you go down near the bottom, there will be Document Properties. You click on that and it'll actually bring up your document properties here, which show you the size, display units here, and the background color. The other thing is that you can show border shadow or show the page border. Now, if you keep the page border, you can turn on and off the shadow just like that. The other thing you can do is just remove the border altogether. What this does is essentially make your document infinite. There's no border and everything. You can scroll in and out and move around as much as you want, and it'll just be infinite. So you can change the background color as well if you wish. I'm just going to keep mine on white for now. The other thing that I always do is I change the display units to be pixels instead of inches, millimeters, centimeters. Again, you can't see this menu popping up, but it's just right here. And then I close this, and now we've got our document. This is going to be pretty difficult to do if a lot of these elements aren't showing up properly whenever I'm trying to show them. And apparently my mouse is freaking out too. There we go. It's because I closed the document properties and OBS thought it was still open. Yeah. So the other thing that you're going to want to do is actually, I needed document properties still open. What we're going to do is go over to the grids tab. Rectangular grid, new. When we do that, it's going to pop up with a brand new grid. Now we can set our grid units, and I have mine set in the preferences to default to spacing of 10 pixels by 10 pixels. And that's going to be the smaller grid right here. As you can see, there's a major grid line every 5 pixels, or every 5 grid lines. I'm going to do my map on a scale of 100 pixels by 100 pixels per room. So I want a major grid line every 10 grid spaces. And so what this does is it gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 squares across and 10 squares down of the small squares. And then the major outline that you see here is actually a 100 pixel by 100 pixels box. So we can enable, turn off the visibility, snap the visible grid lines only. Keep that on, because what you can do is actually zoom in and out, and it'll make the smaller grid lines go away. I'll show you here. If we zoom out, there we go. All the small ones are gone, and now all we see is the 100 pixel by 100 pixel grid lines. And that's going to be very useful for snapping to these grid for the main rooms. But then you can zoom in, you can actually more accurately snap to these smaller grid lines for elements that are within the room or smaller than the room. I'll show you that in a second. So we've got our grid set up here now. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And the next thing that we want to do is look at our snapping options, which these snapping options are going to be over on the side. at least on mine, I don't think that I change in the default. They should be also on any of the new ones on the right hand side. And it's not going to show the tooltip on OBS, but if you hover over each one of these little icons on the very right side, it'll tell you what kind of snapping it has. Now, I generally don't really know what a lot of these do. They tell you what they do, but that's not always obvious how it will behave when you actually go to use it. So my advice when using the snapping is to simply try it out. Just keep toggling all these on and off until you find the snapping that works for whatever it is you're trying to do at the moment. And then hopefully eventually you'll get more used to it as time goes on and actually be better at it than me. Who knows? Now, what we want to do here is we want to create a rectangle or a square for our room. So each room square is going to be 100 pixels by 100 pixels. You can already see it's handled to grid intersection. You can barely see it. It's very small. But what it's going to do is it's going to snap to the grid intersection. And that's because I set the snapping options over here. Near the bottom, you can see there's blue snapping here for this. And I think this one is snap the nodes, paths, and handles. Let me see, what's this? Snap bounding boxes, and then I want to do snap bounding box corners, I think. Maybe I could just turn that off for now. So over here is your arrow selector. This allows you to move and resize things after you've created it. And I'm going to zoom in. And the first thing we're going to see is that we can readjust the size of our square. Now, you see here that the corner of the grid intersection is actually going over top of where the grid is. And we don't want that. The reason why it's doing this is because whenever you create a new rectangle, a base one, it's actually going to give you a border. And the border doesn't count towards the snapping, I suppose. So what we want to do is we can go to fill and stroke. And a lot of these options here that I've already opened, you're going to find it in, I think it's over here in view. Or you just, let's see here. I don't think it's in extensions. There's a lot of different options here. How I figured out how to open up most of these is actually just to go to the website and look through their documentation. They have fairly good documentation for Inkscape, and there's some other basic tutorial videos to help you get started and to show you exactly how to do like these smaller things and opening these. I think that these shortcuts you see here will also open these menus, and you can close them out too. You can close this dock and then reopen them again at some time. You can go through here and see that I got shift align. This is for exporting the PNG image. This is for my text and font. This is for transforming objects, and this stroke and fill is for painting objects. So the first thing I want to do is get an idea of where's the border on my square. So I can move the slider all the way to turn it black, and now you can see, okay, there's definitely a border here. Now we want the border to be a specific width, so that way we can keep it consistent. So I'll go over to the stroke style and I'll change the width to pixels. I really wish it would just default to pixels, since I already have the display units on the document to pixels. Never made any sense to me why it goes to something that's not pixels. But so we have a width of 5 pixels. That actually seems pretty good to me. What you really want to do is you want to zoom in and out here to see, okay, is that enough of a width? Is my room going to look fine from a distance? Now imagine that each one of these squares is a room. So you might be zoomed out this far. And yeah, you can see the border. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. And I just was holding down control and using the mouse wheel, and apparently that tilted everything. Uh-oh. Undo didn't fix that. Um, so let's see if we can... So apparently holding down middle mouse wheel while holding down the control will also just tilt the entire canvas. But I want to realign that. So how do I do that? I'll go to one of these drop down menus and I'll just look for it. And probably under view, canvas orientation, reset rotation. Okay, there we go. Good, we're making some progress. So we got to go back to our stroke again, and we have it as a width of 5 pixels, which I think should suffice. And we'll paint it back to black. And then under the stroke style, you can choose to have different types of corners. So you can like cut the corners off there like that. You can round them. I'm just going to keep them as a miter joint, which is what it says it is. And then there's caps. I'm not entirely sure. I think that has to do with something else. And a lot of these options you probably won't need. So now we've got our square and we've got our selector arrow chosen, and we're gonna reset these corner to grid intersection. Yeah, see, I think the reason why I needed to change the snapping options is because the corner is considered somewhere inside this border for some reason. So what I want to do is snap the cusp node, including rectangle corners. Maybe turn that off. Try to get rid of that behavior. Okay, so I turned off that behavior. And now what I want to do is go back to snap bounding boxes. It's the second one down from the top. The top one enables snapping altogether. And so we're going to snap bounding boxes, and we want to snap the bounding box corners. So the bounding box is the actual corner of the square, including the border. Now we're going to get it aligned a lot better here. Snap it to that corner, and now it's aligned to our grid perfectly. So we have our first square, and we're going to be able to use this to duplicate it and just keep placing it where we want our rooms to be. So this is our room, and we're going to hit Control D. We'll duplicate it. Or you can right click it and duplicate as well. And every time you move it over, it's going to snap the corner of the bounding box to the grid. And so you're going to get nice even rooms here. I'm going to keep duplicating that and make a little road. And maybe we'll go down a little bit. And then perhaps here we can create some kind of intersection where it goes in both directions. And you can see here how quickly and easily I can align all of these rooms to be absolutely perfect. And that's one of the greatest things about working with this, is that you don't need to worry about getting everything aligned. And even if you did, you can select all of these rooms here. You just select all of them, and then you go to align and distribute. And they have options here: center on vertical axes. And this allows you to do a lot of interesting things with distributing and aligning. Right now, it's not going to do anything when I click it because they're already aligned. Let's just say that just say I move one of these. Uh-oh. I broke it. How did I do that? So for some reason, all these boxes just disappeared on me. I'm going to try to move this one out of the way. They're still there, I guess, but I had this happen to me earlier. I don't know if it's a bug or there's a way to actually layer things underneath each other. So we're just gonna go up to the option under layer, and we're gonna layer to top. Or object, we're gonna raise to top. And they're still disappeared. Yeah, okay, there they are. Oh, okay, well that looks like it was just an illusion. They were still there, but I had to zoom in to reset it. So that's probably a bug. In any case, let's say that we have one of these boxes, and let's turn off snapping for a second here. We didn't have it aligned. So if we selected all of these boxes, we can do center on vertical axes, and it'll actually pick the most center of all of the boxes combined. And it seems like all the other boxes were aligned, so it just told the other box, hey, you get in line too. So it fixed it for us. But we're going to go back to snapping the corners. There we go. And then we could just select all these and move them there, just like that. And let's say we wanted to make a bigger area here, like a forum or marketplace or just some kind of hub area. Just make it nice and big. We're going to make it 4x4. Now, the other thing that we do once we got our road and we've got our little hub intersection here is we can add some kind of depth to these rooms. So we want these rooms to show that there's roads here, that the border isn't stopping you from going one room to another, almost like a line, something like that. So we'll take a new rectangle and we'll just we're gonna zoom in so that way we can not do that. I need to stop doing that. So we're gonna go back to view again, and we're gonna go to canvas orientation, reset rotation. All right. So what I want to do is, let's first square this up. Once we zoom back in, you can see that we get all these smaller grid intersections again. So now we can start actually snapping to smaller grid intersections. So we can take this and we could say, okay, first of all, we want to get rid of the border because we want to make this like a little square that we can put inside the roads and make it look like the same color as the background. So we're going to take the border, and it currently is black. In order to get this color, we could just select the little eyedropper thing at the bottom here, and then select on our canvas the color we want, and now our border is the same color. We didn't have to. We could also go over and change the width of the border. That's possible, and just get rid of it altogether. It's essentially the same thing, but maybe you want to use the border for something else. I don't know. The one problem with the border is that it kind of messes with the size of the square a bit, so you might have to resize it again. So we've got a 3x3 block here, the same color as our road. And we can bring it over here, and it doesn't really matter that it doesn't look that great as far as the way that it snaps. Well, first of all, we're going to need to make it bigger because we want it to be even for the doorway. So let's go with 5. So we're going to make it 5. Or just make it a 5x5. Now we can bring it back over. It's still not snapping evenly for me, so I'm going to make it a 4, I guess. See how a 4 works. There we go. It's actually pretty right there in the middle. So we've got 2 blocks on one side of the top and 2 blocks below, 2 blocks in the middle going horizontally, and it cuts right through there, and it makes a little doorway on our road. So now when you visually look at this map, you can tell that you can actually go through here. Let's turn off the grid for a second. So the grid's off, and now it looks pretty clean. You can see that we're able to travel through here and that there's a pathway. So this is where you're going to place your exit and your entrance into each of these rooms. Turn the grid back on. Now what we can do is we can select this little exit square that we made, and we can just Control D, duplicate it again. Bring it down, put it over top of there, put it over there, and then we can just go along, keep duplicating and placing this. Go back down here, duplicate this one. Let me zoom out a little bit. Don't zoom out too far, because then you won't be able to get that small grid snapping. See, if I duplicate another one, it's going to try to snap to the corners of the room. And I don't want it to do that. But that's the only grid that it sees. So it's freaking out because that's the only behavior it can do. So we're going to move it again. We're going to zoom back in. And then we're going to get that nice, clean look. And then once you get used to doing this, it can actually go pretty quickly. So we're just going to make all of our doorways here. The truth is that these boxes don't matter how far you have it in or out. As long as you're getting rid of the border, it's still nice to have it even, just to make sure that everything's consistent. And to make sure that it definitely covers the border as much as it possibly can. So since this is an open area and all these rooms are connected with entrances and exits all in here, that means that we need one of these to show that on every single possible entrance and exit. It's a little off. Fix that and move on over here. So we zoom out again, and this is the final result. Let's go ahead and turn off our grid for a second again here. And now we have a fairly decent looking road and form square here. You can clearly see where it's indicated that there's exits and entrances. And you can zoom out pretty far and you'll still get a general feel of the map. What happens now is that once you have all this set up and you have your map set up, the great thing is that you can save this as an SVG file. And what's that going to do is it's going to keep it as a vector graphics file. That means you can share it with other people and they can open it up. And vector graphics allows you to zoom in as much as you want, and it's always still going to look the same no matter how much you zoom in or out. Well, out, you're going to start to lose some detail. But the vector graphics readjust every time that you change the scale of the document. So it's always going to be consistent. The other thing is that you can export it as a PNG over here, and you can export just the area, just the selection, the page, the entire page, the drawing, whatever you like. If I were to select all of this, it's only gonna do the selection as a PNG. And I'm not entirely sure at the moment if it's gonna export the white background or not. Let's see if I can just export that, and then I'll find out. Bring it up here in my in the documents. And it saved it somewhere I'm not familiar with, so I'll just find it. Okay. So it looks like it just saved it, just the squares themselves. So I'm going to try to bring that up here. So this is my image viewer. It's iFran view. And this allows me to see what it looks like when it's been exported. Fit that to screen. The black background is just from the program itself. If you were to paste this image anywhere on a white background, it would show up as white or any other color. So it looks like we're all set for that. And we see that it's only going to export it just the squares that were selected and nothing else, not the white background. And that's pretty much how you make your map on here. You can add some text. I'll show you that real quick. The text is pretty useful. Now, I have the font size set to 10. So you can see here I type, this is the town square, but you can't really see it on the document. The reason for that is because obviously we made everything 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So font size 10 is only 10 pixels. It's not going to be very big. What I really like about using text here in Inkscape is that you can change it in this editor, and then you can hit apply, and it doesn't apply it until you hit apply. And I just accidentally deleted it. Whatever, we'll make a new one. This, let's just say town square. Make it capitalized, then hit apply, and it shows up in there. We can also go back to the font settings, and we can change the font size. So we'll do like 144, apply. Now it went red because there's not enough room to show that. So we want to go to this little diamond at the bottom right side, and we can readjust the size so we can start to see something. And we'll just keep pulling it out, and now it went to blue, showing that we have it. That's a little bit too big, so I'm going to readjust it down to maybe 64, apply. We don't really need to adjust the bounding box again if we don't want to. It's not that big of a deal, but it is good practice to try to keep things, consistent and even as much as possible. So that's still maybe a little bit too big. We'll go down to 48, apply. And then in order to move your text, you want to go back up to the arrow selector here, and it's going to change it. Now, one of the things you got to be careful of here is that the only way that you should change the size of your text is through the font size in the text and font features. If you happen to grab your text and you're moving it, or if you grab one of these corners, it's going to stretch it and it's going to look weird. You're going to really screw it up, unless that's what you're going for. But you can really, you can make it really big. It's still, you can actually see the font size changes. but it's not going to be consistent as far as height and width. So we can really stretch it out as far as we want. And you can see that it gets really, really weird. So we don't want that. We want to go back to the way it was. If you can't manage to reset it at all, you can just select it and delete it, and just make a new one. Town square, apply, and I have my font size set default to 10, so it's always going to jump back there. We don't want that, so we'll just put it 48. Readjust the bounding box, and now we can move it down here. And look, you can even see that the text will snap to the border of the boxes. We want to bring back our grid again real quick. And we can actually snap it to the grid. And it'll be, you know, somewhat even here. It's a little bit bigger than these 4 squares, but that's okay. So now we have our town square named, and we put our text in there. We can turn off the grid again and select over here. Now you can see we've got a fairly decent map already started here. The other thing that you could do is with the text is you could start labeling things. So a lot of these types of games, they will actually put a let's put a new text here, and let's put a number. So let's say number 12. So whatever is number 12 on the legend is going to show up in this square, and we might want to change the text size to be a little bit bigger. Let's see what it looks like. We could still get away with bigger, maybe 28, even 32. Well, the bounding box needs adjusted. Let's just see how that looks. Try to get it right in the middle. Matter of fact, we'll move it down to this town square. And it's trying to snap to these bounding boxes. We could just turn off snapping real quick, and then we could just freehand it. And even better yet, now that we have already had our rooms completed, we could just duplicate one of those, put it over here, turn snapping back on, and view the grid again. And we can just snap this room to here. Grab one of these little exits, duplicate it, bring it over there, and now we can put our text over here. Now you see what happened? The text disappeared. It's still there, but because Inkscape works in layering, this square for the room and the exit itself was created after we made the text for the number. So the text for the number is actually at a lower layer than anything that's created after it, and that's why it goes behind it. What you can do is you can either select the room itself and you can move it down. Under object, there's options for raise, lower, raise to top, and lower to bottom. And there's also shortcuts for that. Using just raise or lower will raise it one level at a time or lower it one level at a time. But if you use raise to top and lower to bottom, it'll send it straight up to the top of the stack or straight down to the bottom of the stack, putting it behind or above everything else. And you can use that to organize the layering and decide the priority of the layers. So for this object, we're actually just going to raise it all the way to the top. And if we move it over again now, you can see that it has it's above the room. So now that room is labeled 12, and then we can just even select that 12, duplicate it, move it over here, put it there, and then we can just make a new text. Or we can actually just, let's try something else. Let's try, if we select the text tool and we increase the bounding box, we can actually just continue to write in here 12, and let's just say weapon shop. Apply. Fix the bounding box again, which is trying to snap to the grid. We're going to turn off snapping again. And then we can move this around here. And so now we have our legend. So now anybody looking at this will know that 12 is the weapon shop. It's pretty useful. And I think that pretty much covers everything you're going to want to know. Let's just do one other thing here, which is to create some extra area underneath. So let's say we wanted this to be all grass. This is going to be all grass. And we're going to turn on snapping again so we can pull the corners and get it lined up real nice. And then we can just change the color of this box. What I want to do is change it to green. And that's a little too bright. Maybe just the darker green. And using these predetermined colors down here at the bottom is a pretty good idea, because you'll be able to have some consistency if you need to get back to that color. You can always use the eyedropper tool anyways if you need to grab a color that you forgot how to get it, so you don't have to mess with all these values in here as well. So now that we have our grass, it's covering up the rest of our city. So again, what do? We go to object at the top, drop down, and we go to lower to bottom. So now it's going to drop all the way down to the bottom priority. And we're going to have a nice green grass background. And we can do the same for making, let's say over here we wanted it to be the ocean. So we're going to take that and we're going to make it blue. So let's see here. Let's make the grass a bit bigger. And go as far as we want. So far that, you know, nobody will really be able to tell that there's an end to it, no matter how far you're zoomed out on your image. So we want to do the same with the ocean. Let's just make the ocean really huge. It's not really snapping properly with the grass, but it doesn't matter at this point. So now what we have is have our little town. I'm gonna select back out here so that way it doesn't have anything selected. There we go. We've got our green grass surrounding our road and our town square, and we've got the ocean on this side over here. We could even put like little docks over here or something like that, and maybe some ships, perhaps even an island or something that you want to be able to navigate over there. And then we could turn off the grid again, and it looks like these didn't really. Let's just make the ocean just go over top of the grass, just to make sure that there's no gap there. It might just be that there's some kind of I wonder why. Oh, there's a border. That's right. So I made the border orange on one of these at least. So I think it's this. The ocean has an orange border. We're just gonna take the little eyedropper and turn it blue, same as the ocean. So the border's still there, but we just changed the color. Unselect these things, zoom in, move around with middle mouse wheel, and there we go. We basically have a nice little crisp looking mud map that you can expand on, and you could create backgrounds for, and a nice little legend with your text. What you want to do now is you could just select an area, I suppose, and then export it as a PNG. There's all kinds of options. You can definitely mess with how you want to export it. You can even do custom area, and you can set how big the width and the height is, and where you want it to, the origins of the boxes. So X0 would be the top left, Y0 would be the bottom left, I believe, and X1. Yeah, so this is how far you want it to be. So let's see over here. It looks like this is where 0 is on the grid. You're going to look at 0 here, and you're going to look at 0 here. And that's where it's going to start. So you can select just this custom area, and you can take a screenshot, or you could even use your any kind of screenshotting tool you might have on your operating system as well, just to take a screenshot. So I hope that gets you started and being able to create your mud map. And there's all kinds of really neat things that you can do when you start messing around with this. And so just explore and check out the documentation for Inkscape and have fun.